And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Benched with Bubba, episode 146. Got a special guest, a recurring guest, a good friend of the podcast, good friend of mine. You can find him on Twitter at CTM Baseball, Matt Modica. How are we doing, man?
We're doing great today. Just getting ready for, the beautiful thing that baseball is.
Yes, it is a beautiful thing, and every time now that pitchers and catchers are reporting and hitters are showing up and getting to see all those videos, it's always a good thing. And overreactions on Twitter, it's a time one like any other about that. But before we get into the podcast notes, you have been a busy man lately. Why don't you let everybody know what you got going on?
I recently signed on with the Athletic Fantasy and contributed some baseball stuff there. Did the starting pitcher preview, the closers, and third base preview. And right now, before the season starts, I'll be doing an ADP series, which the first one dropped today. And when the season starts, every Sunday you'll get to see two start pitchers and my starting pitcher index, the landscape of pitching.
Yeah, I absolutely love it because I got to know you as a big-time pitcher kind of guru. You had your CTM baseball site and all that good stuff. But watching you come out with stuff, and even today I was just kind of having coffee looking at Twitter, and I see your article pop up about the ADP stuff. And that's some really interesting stuff to dig into. And I highly recommend people go check out The Athletic. I promoted it on my other podcast just because before they even did fantasy, that their overall work is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And now your fantasy aspect into it, and it's not even that expensive for the website. Like, it's super cheap for all the information you guys get fantasy-wise, real-life-wise. It's worth every penny in my sense. So I highly recommend people go check it out, and it supports good buddies like Matt Modica. So go get at it.
Yeah, it's one-stop shopping for everything, pretty much.
Yeah, it has. Like, literally yesterday I was on the couch and I just opened up the app, and I think I read like 7 articles because I'm like, okay, I need to catch up on some of this. And then there's so many more I want to get into. It's just great. And yeah, go check it out, everybody. Really, really good stuff there. Most of this podcast is going to be starting pitcher focused because Matt's the guru at this, like I said. But we got to talk about some recent news. It was sad last podcast I had no recent news to talk about because that's where we're at these days. But we do have one signing. Mike Moustakas returns to the Milwaukee Brewers, a 1-year, $10 million deal. It's an interesting note because we saw when they traded for him last year, Travis Shaw went to second base. First off, how do you think Moustakas coming back to Milwaukee fits for a fantasy perspective?
I mean, for fantasy, I think it's the perfect landing spot. That park, it's just a good hitting park altogether, but especially for left-handed power. We know his defense, and, we're not worried about the Brewers' offense. We're worried about the pitching. And, you add that glove in there, what effect it has with Travis Shaw moving to second base and his ability to play that defensively. I mean, as long as Travis Shaw doesn't face a left-hander, offensively, he's pretty damn good.
Yeah, and that's the interesting part when it comes to this is I thought all that Travis Shaw back to second. Now we're going to lose. Everyone's excited because he has dual eligibility this year. He'll probably won't have third base eligibility the following year, but there's already one report out today, and I kind of already made the joke that we need to take everything with a grain of salt in spring training, and there's certain things to look at and certain not to. But now, like, the first report out already is they're talking about moving Moustakas to second and keeping Shaw at third. So I have no idea what they're doing. But either way, they're both going to be on the field. The question I have for you, and it's kind of a prospect-laden question, many were looking forward to Keston Taya coming up this year with his hit tool. Now this kind of blocks him from coming up. Is there even a reason to draft him super late in drafts right now?
No, I don't think right now he's somebody that, you keep on your watch list if, say, an injury occurs and he's tearing it up down there. Got to see him at the AFL. We know the hype as far as, like you said, the hit tool. I don't know how the power plays with him overall, but he's still young. And, everything that I've seen and I've heard, I'm no prospect guru, but he seems like somebody that's going to be really good. I think the one thing that, maybe late in drafts and deeper leagues, I've been a sucker for this guy every year, was Corey Spangenberg.
Yeah.
Maybe had, some, late value and stuff like that, but that seems to have gone by the wayside.
Yeah, no, that was one like we heard when this whole started coming out, the first roster resource came out, like, oh, Spangenberg's going to be playing every day for the Brew Crew, or at least most of the time, and everyone's got excited about that because we remember what he kind of did for the Padres there, and that's definitely going. And even guys like I'm totally blanking now all of a sudden, their multi-eligibility infielder, I don't know why I'm blanking on this. He was going to be a big time play for them as well. So they're all kind of getting.
What's his name? Hernan Perez.
Yes, Hernan Perez. I don't know why I blanked on that.
Hernan Perez seems to get like hot for a couple of weeks here and there, every couple of times a season, and contributes.
Yeah, he would have been an interesting one. That's pretty much gone. Well, that wraps up our news for the day. I'm going to laugh because it never fails. Someone's going to sign right after we finish recording. It's just a matter of time. But I'll get to that next episode. Let's talk starting pitchers. And what we're going to go here is it's the top 25 NFBC draft champions ADP since February 1st. Because one thing, and I made this before I saw Modica's article today, a lot of things change if you kind of navigate the NFBC ADP from month to month or different dates. It's a lot of fun. And that's one thing that really is intriguing with your article. And even my last episode, I did some closer stuff. There were guys leapfrogging other guys just in between January till now, from February till now. When you look at starting pitchers, there are a couple of interesting ones that stand out. But let's start with the big guys, plain and simple. You got Scherzer, you got Sale, you have DeGrom. Kind of give me your thoughts on those three, and then how do you break that down? Because I've seen them go in all different orders so far this season.
Well, I mean, to me, the best pitcher in baseball is Chris Sale when fully healthy. I mean, we've seen the dominance he's been able to do and do it in the American League, now in the American League East. But unfortunately, last season with the shoulder and the decreased velocity in the playoffs, he was still, able to pitch in the World Series. All signs or all indications I've gotten is there's no restrictions and all that. But, I need to see him on a mound. At least like when we saw Jacob deGrom a couple of years ago, people were worried about him, but he was going in the fifth round, which I was taking, around there. It's a lot different, the first or the fifth. And, if I see him, everything checks out good. The velocity's 100%. There's no signs of soreness with the shoulder. Then, where he's going right now has been a bargain. Those people will reap that benefit for drafting early, and he's going to shoot up the draft boards. But, I mean, all in all, with this big three, in that top half of the first round, which is where I want to live, and I'll just sidetrack for a quick second. I want to live there because it's setting up my second and third round. Not that you can't do well on the turn and all that, but especially for this year, there's 14 pitches with an ADP under 40. And I want to be involved in, Kershaw's one of them, and I'm just scared to death. And, last spring training, he pitched 21 innings, 0 ERA, 23-4. I brought back in late. I stayed away. I just can't do it again this year. I love him. He's, he's Hall of Famer. Has been the best thing to watch, these past few years. Scherzer's right up there with him, though. So, look, Max is, he's the gold standard in the fact that, you're signing up for at least 200 innings. And even if he regresses a bit, it's 250 strikeouts. 4 straight seasons, under 3 ERA, under 1 WHIP. So even with some regression, you want to ding him. He's got to give something back at some point. It's not going to be steep at all. But in that first half of the first round, I am looking at the hitter that can either, get me, 25-20 with a 300-plus average, or somebody like a J.D. Martinez or an Arenado, high 30s, low 40s, and 100 runs, 100 RBIs. So I'd rather go that route. And by being in the first half, if I have KDS preference, and I get that, in the second and third rounds, I can either fortify that hitting, I can take an ace, or I have the opportunity to get double aces, which I did today in the Tout Wars draft. I mentioned that on Sirius yesterday. And it was, especially in that format that I'm doing today, which is a draft and hold, you can't do in-season pickups. So for that, it's more imperative you get those 200-inning guys. So I just think it's all about setting up a plan. I love the fact that we're seeing industry people drafting pitchers in the first round now on a regular basis. I know that was kind of something that was taboo a few years ago. We started seeing some of them doing it, and now it's becoming a regular thing. So I think that's a really good move forward.
Yeah, no, it is something that used to be kind of, you were an anarchist if you took one early. Like you were shunned. You had to wear the scarlet letter around if you took one early. And now it's, you said everyone's doing it. I'm not saying it's all analysts that are drafting early right now, but a lot of the kind of smarter fantasy players, or not just recreational fantasy players, are the ones that we're taking this ADP from in the NFBC draft champion stuff. They're experienced guys, and when they're taking 3 guys in the top 15, basically the first round, that's pretty outstanding. You have 8 guys going in the first 2 rounds, so that tells you a lot of going on there. And what you just mentioned about, the top 40 pitchers and all that, that's straight out of your article. There's great little tidbits on how many pitched 200 innings, how many had 200 strikeouts, so on and so forth. So there's a ton of ways to break it down, and you are one of the best at the NFBC. I had Rob Silver on a couple episodes ago. You play with Rob Silver. We all know Vlad Sedler. You guys
I haven't reached Rob Silver's level yet. I got to give him props. He's taken down an overall. He's won a diamond, or maybe I'm even cheating him, but I think he's got a diamond in him. So
he knows his stuff. That's for sure. He knows his stuff. But like you 3 are kind of the ones I look to because I see most of your stuff. I'm starting to find more and more out there. There's a big group of you guys that are NFBC savvy, and I like how you mentioned the strategy there. You mentioned the draft and holds that you're in right now. You mentioned wanting to get those locked in innings. What kind of other strategies do you look at for draft and holds? Because for many kind of just casual players, they're starting to dip their toes in like best ball / draft and hold ideas, but there's really not a lot out there that kind of helps them change their mind, because it is a different game plan compared to a regular season. How do you approach that?
It definitely is. And the crucial thing I've learned, I've been doing the draft champions for some time now. It's been a profitable endeavor, and innings pitched and at-bats are crucial. And even when you get into that, second part of the draft after the first 10 rounds, or, there's going to be some guys you don't really like or don't want to draft, but they get the innings or they get the at-bats year after year. And, those guys become so valuable to you. And, normally you don't have to take them in other formats, maybe because you can get that weekly pickup and you can stream. But a guy I mentioned yesterday too, a guy like Jake Arrieta, I really don't like him. Nobody wants Jake Arrieta. Once upon a time, a couple of years ago, he was Jake Arrieta that, we were all in on, but now we're all running away from. I can't believe he had like a 7.8 swinging strike percentage. I don't even know if that's real. So that's something I think, you have to look at. You have to have guys. I mean, you have to draft pitching. You have to have at least 20 pitchers. That's usually the range, at least 20, maybe to 22. But, hitters that, are going to get at-bats. And you're never going to believe how over the course of a season, how valuable guys are to you in this format that maybe, would be on your bench in other. Even in deep leagues, you wouldn't necessarily need to have them as much. But in this format, they really do mean a lot. And like I said, as I mentioned with the first half of the first round, if I was picking late in the second round, I just want to touch on that. Like a DeGrom or a Sale, I don't know how long Sale's going to live there. Because once we see him healthy, he's going to move up. And I'm totally fine with DeGrom. I think he might be the safest. And that's not being a Met homer. You see the hat. It's not being a homer. His home ballpark, it's everything. It's like Dodger pitchers. I always want to be involved with Dodger pitchers. That mound and all that stuff. It's the National League. So DeGrom's 30 years old. He's going to be 31, but he's he's only got 900 innings on that arm. He didn't come up until he was 26. A guy like Felix Hernandez was pitching when he was 19. And, he's a year older than DeGrom or so, but he's got over 2,000 innings on his arm. So, it's a different thing. So, I mean, if you're picking in that late first round, I do think you need to get a pitcher. We saw James Anderson pull up Garrett Cole today, and I thought he executed that perfectly. He took Aaron Judge and Garrett Cole. I think you want that base. You need somebody that can get you those 200 innings, close to it at least, and over 200 strikeouts. Because, in any deep competitive league, you're going to need something like 1,450 strikeouts. And there's a lot of upside arms, but you're gambling. You need a couple of blue chips as your foundation for your portfolio.
No, I like that. And, there's an article on Fangraphs recently by Ariel Cohen that showed, and again, your article dictates kind of where the dominant pitchers are and where the others are. Yeah, that top upper echelon of, say, 10 to 20 pitchers, and there's that gap in the middle Paul Sporer calls the blob, and then there's the bottom part. And there's been like research done at that middle tier there. If you're focusing your starters and your aces there, you're in trouble. Like you get your most return from the top and the bottom. That middle part usually has the most area for loss is what it looks like.
Yeah, no, it's tough. And there's guys I really like. I think problem with a lot of people is expectations. And I tweeted something out about Jamison Taya the other day. Guy who I like is inside my top 20. I said, if you pitch to a 360 ERA this year with 200 innings and say 190 strikeouts, would that be a disappointment? And I was very happy to see that people said no, like 80%. Because he pitched to a 320 ERA last year. And a lot of people would say, well, he just, his ERA regressed to 360. That's good. And if he's your number 2 and he's giving you that, the average ERA, you look at it, the last few years, except for I think 2015, it's been over 4. So you're looking at 439 or 419. So you have to put everything in perspective.
You just mentioned a guy like Thailand, and we'll get back to the list here in a minute, but I'm having more fun with this conversation. So there's the Tyons, the Glasnows. Last year, Luis Castillo, you and I both liked him a lot. There's the helium guys, the guys that everyone's talking about. How do you, and maybe your ADP report will showcase that week to week, how do you keep from overpaying for these guys? What do you do to focus on not doing that?
Well, see, it's all going to depend on how you start your draft, especially in a 15 team. One thing, I learned years ago from the Hall of Famer, Steve Japinka, who's one of the best players, and he's a master at fab. That's probably my weak point. I'm spending my money
too. Yeah.
Like I'm a drunk, sailor, whatever you want to call it. But, what you need to do is have a plan. You're going to be weak at a certain position. It's just not possible to be hitting everything. And what happened here?
You're good.
I'm good? Okay. I thought I lost you for a second. And what I try and do is have a game plan. I had one today. And sometimes there's going to be hitting value that just falls to you that you cannot pass up. And if that's the case, you're going to have to be more aggressive with the pitching. And even if you got to live in the middle rounds, because you can't just keep saying, I'm going to just get all the guys later on, all these upside arms. I think Jose Barrios is going to take that next step. I think he did a lot of things that checked off a lot of boxes for me last year. Pitched the 200 innings, the xFIP and the ERA lined up. Those home road splits are stark. But this is a guy, we know he has the stuff. Experience is a wonderful thing for young players. And, it's guys like that. Now, say if I didn't get pitching the first 3 rounds, and I'm living with like Jose Barrios as my number 1, I'm pounding pitching for the next couple of rounds. I'm not waiting because there's a good chance one of those guys is going to bust on me. It's just not going to happen. And hopefully 2 out of the 3 that I get hit. And look, that's going to happen with hitters. Last year on the turn, I had a league where I had Chris Bryant and Carlos Correa. I thought that was the greatest thing. That was probably my worst team I had all year. Yeah. So look, there are going to be busts and stuff. And then when you move away from those blue chips, you have to have quantity. So, because you're not going to hit on everyone. I don't care how good you are. Not everybody's going to hit.
All right. You mentioned guys like Carlos Correa and Chris Bryant, guys that we're trying to buy back on this year that, we're getting technically value compared to where they were last year in last year's drafts. Kershaw's one where both you and I just kind of agree I'm staying away from. But, deeper down the drafts, maybe Jake Arrieta's one. Maybe there's a bunch of other guys. Some want the Cole Hamels of the world per se and others. How do you look into those? How do you kind of convince yourself, okay, it's time to buy back in on these guys?
Well, one of the things, if I have that foundation and say I doubled up on aces at the 2-3 turn or in that area, then I'm going to love to live in – there's an exciting around like 150, a little before, a little after, where you have the Shane Biebers, the Nick Pavettas, the Tyler Glasnows, Andrew Heaney's, Erod. I've been pulling Joe Musgrove up all draft season. There's just too much to like. I know he's a health risk. So now those guys, I want to get at least 1 if I'm lucky enough to get 2. And then, I have a foundation where if one of these guys pops, I'm going to get really profitable here. And so there's that. A guy like Lester, look, everything's pointing the wrong way. He's been a workhorse. He gives you the innings. I think the innings will continue to be there. How effective, I'm really not sure. But he continues to fall. And at some point, you take Lester and you say, you know what? I have a guy that's going to provide me innings, and in a deep league, that's going to be valuable. Even a Jake Arrieta, as he continues to fall, then at some point you got to say, hey, I'm willing to draft him. Every player should have a price on your board. You should never write anybody off because they screwed you over last year, or you really don't like the metrics. Yeah, okay, you don't like the metrics, but at a certain price, it's worth the gamble.
No, I like that a lot. All right, so wrapping up the big three here, do you have it Sale, Scherzer, DeGrom? That's how you look at them?
No, actually, I have it Scherzer, DeGrom, and Sale currently. Like I said, I'm going to revise this in March when we get to see them pitch a little here and stuff like that. But like I said, Sale's number 3 only because of what happened last season. And I can't get that out of my mind. I just need to see him. I think DeGrom could easily be the top pitcher off the board next year. And I just can't justify telling anyone not to take Max Scherzer right now. His dominance in the National League East and what he's done has been Kershaw-esque in these last 5 years.
Okay. So I like it. Let's dig into the rest of the top 10 here. It's kind of a group that you can make arguments for anybody in this realm as your ace. Like I would not care which one you took. Verlander's going first off the board here. Some even consider him that guy that's kind of a 1A tier guy. Like he's real close to being there. They got Kluber, Nola, who we're both big on. Garrett Cole, you mentioned James Anderson jumping on him. Great stuff there. Blake Snell, Severino, and Trevor Bauer. Since I did this list last night, Severino has passed over Bauer already. That's how quickly this changes, but not by many draft slots, obviously. When you're looking at this area here, you can get some specific on anybody you want, but how do you kind of break down this group of guys, a bigger group than normal?
Look, there's going to be some people that love the veterans that have continually done it. And, I can't argue with anybody that has Verlander 4. For me, it's going to be Aaron Nola. And my reasoning is this. I think he's extremely safe. He dominates at Citizen Bank Ballpark. Look at the stats the last couple of seasons. He is dominant there. Now, what I really like about Nola is you saw last season the progress that he made. The swinging strike percentage really went up. His K percentage increased later on in the season. This is a pitcher that was known for getting cold strikes. He's incorporated the swing and miss in his game. He got the 200 innings. I think there's everything we could want and more from him. So for me, he's my number 4. I'm not going to argue, like you said. It's that close. I think I put Verlander 7. Garrett Cole's my number 5. I was super high on Cole last year. I went all in on that. I'm going back in again. I think we saw what happened last year. I think it could actually get even better this year. And I've gone back and forth between Cole and Snell. And the reason Snell is 6 and he's up so high, I know it's a small sample when he came back, but you do need to check out what he did with his repertoire. He changed his pitch mix, number 1. I mean, he was just outright dominant. And I think he has the best shot of being the next Clayton Kershaw.
Nice. Hopefully no back problems there.
Or at least not for another few seasons.
Exactly. It's just an interesting group, and it's interesting looking at your ADP risers and fallers. It seems like we'll get to some more of them. The Indians, people are all of a sudden jumping on their big 3, and they're jumping on the Astros' big arms, and everybody else is kind of staying put or falling back a little bit. But those two teams seem like they're really elevating forward. A guy like Corey Kluber, you got Kluber, you got Bauer. We'll put Carrasco in there right now. The big 3 in Cleveland. Carrasco's 11th off the board, so just behind Bauer. They're all really good in their own ways. Carrasco, every time I look at his age, shocks me that he's really that old. Compared to, I feel like he should be like in his 27, and he's not. Trevor Bauer, people are saying is the ace of those 3, but Kluber's still getting 10 picks on Bauer. How do you look at those 3?
I mean, I still like Kluber for this year, and I've had him ahead of Carrasco, but I think I might flip them. Because I just think what Carrasco has done the last couple of seasons, I mean, if you look at his stats and Luis Severino from the advanced metrics, they're like identical. Ground ball percentage, xFIP, swing and strike, strike percentage, walk percentage. And I just think you're getting a guy in a terrible division on a good team. He's got a good closer. So is everything I like about him. Trevor Bauer, up until last season, couldn't figure it out. It finally came to fruition. The one thing that was missing was he couldn't get guys to chase. And last year, if you look at it, that was a major boom to him. He really got that chase rate up, got guys to, swing and miss. So everything, everybody's growth is different. I believe Bauer is going to be a very good pitcher, even if he regresses over a run and has a 3.40 ERA. I mean, if he didn't get hurt last year, he probably wins the AL Cy Young. I mean, because he'd have more innings than Snell. He'd have just over a 2 ERA, the strikeouts. So that would have been interesting. So, I mean, it's tough. That, from, like we said, that 4 to 13 range, you got, I mean, Noah Syndergaard had a down year, and I still think he could be one of the top 5 pitchers in baseball this year. So you got guys like that. You got people shying away from Buehler because of the innings limit. But, I mean, the talent is there. I think he's getting at least 170 innings. Yeah. And those are going to be an awesome 170 innings. It's his home park in Chavez Ravine. I give every Dodger pitcher that's not injured or have a back problem, I give them a bump. I just do. And this kid looks like the real deal. And one of the most impressive starts he had last season was in the playoffs when Acuna hit the grand slam off him. He didn't wilt after that. I mean, he was down, 4-0. He gave his team another 4+ innings or so, battled, and that's a competitor. This kid pitched his last season knowing he was going to get Tommy John at Vanderbilt. So,
yeah, no, Buehler is a special case, and it goes Carrasco, Buehler, Syndergaard, Kershaw, kind of wrapping out that top 14 there. And you mentioned top 13, leaving Kershaw out for obvious reasons.
Can I say one thing quick about Kershaw? Look, yeah. I could be dead wrong on him. And if I'm wrong, he's going to be one of the best bargains we've ever had. Yes. As for this guy was the number 5 pick last year. Yeah. So.
No, and I'm with you. Like I can't do it. I was off of him last year, and I'm not taking a victory lap on anybody's health ever. Like that's nothing to joke about. I've had back problems. I know what he's going through. It is not good. I don't know how he gets back on the mound because there's days I can't even get out of bed. But given he probably has better medicine than I do. But it's really weird seeing the passing of the torch with Kershaw to Buehler. Like Kershaw, I think it was Kershaw the other day. If someone finds the tweets on Twitter, one of the beat writers basically just quoted everything Kershaw said. It was like an essay on how good Walker Buehler is. It was
I saw that. Yeah,
amazing stuff he had to say about him. And that's one thing with Kershaw. And I know Don Drysdale or Sandy Koufax, one of the two, said it last year in the playoffs on that Buehler start you mentioned. There's a lot that this kid Buehler has that's more than just his pitch mix. Is like there's a lot going on upstairs that makes him fearful, like a very fearsome pitcher. So there's a lot to like about Buehler. Buehler could be one of those guys that this time next year we're talking about in that Garrett Cole range if everything projects properly, in my opinion. But because I agree with you, I think he's going 165 to 170 this year. And if they play it right, that'll be perfect because then next year he's ready to take that complete jump. The one I like that you mentioned is Noah Syndergaard there. I had this discussion a while back with somebody else, like the Syndergaards, the Strasburgs. There's a lot of negatives to them, and rightfully so, because they miss good amounts of time every season. It's very frustrating when you take that pick. But where I'm at this year, and it goes, I keep referencing your charts on the ADP thing and other stuff are phenomenal because it really brings into perspective how few pitchers pitch 200 innings and how few do this, that, and the other. My question to you is a guy like Noah Syndergaard, yes, we might only get like 150 innings out of him. But 150 Noah Syndergaard innings are a million times better to me than like 180 from Felix Hernandez or somebody else that you're going to get like 40 picks later. Does that make sense to you? Would you rather kind of say, screw it, I'm not going to worry about the injury there?
Yeah, no, but I'm banking on this year he's getting to that 185, 200 range. To me, 150 where I'm taking him would be a disappointment. Hopefully they're a great 150, but that would disappoint me. Like I said, 2 years ago, he had that, 184 innings. We were super excited about him. The last 2 years, he's only pitched 184 innings. So I'm expecting, even though last year, I think it was Eno at the First Pitch Arizona did a thing on his Noah Syndergaard's command and lack of it. And one thing I watched last year, and it frustrated the hell out of me, watching all these Met games, in this, when the starts that DeGrom or Wheeler or Syndergaard didn't make, was Syndergaard would be ahead of these hitters so often. And then he would, like throw a pitch too far in the meat of the plate, and it was just so frustrating. Like, you got to get this guy to chase. You got to be, wasting a pitch here, or at least making it look like it's hittable. And I think that's a big step forward. He had a tale of two halves last year, but I mean, look, the talent's there. I don't think anybody can deny that. So he's still young, and one of these years it's going to click. And I have a feeling it's going to be this one.
Yeah, Nick Pollock wrote a great piece for Fangraphs last year about Noah Syndergaard. I don't want you to read it because I want you to be able to sleep at night. But it was basically what you just said there. He broke down his pitch mixes, and like when he was ahead in the count, he's throwing tee shots, and it's just like, what are you doing with this stuff
so
you have?
Frustrating. It really was. I was like, damn it, man.
Like, it broke it down so much clearer, that because I don't watch all the games like you do. I'm like, okay, well, this makes sense now, because you're watching him going, okay, he's dominating, yet he still gave up 4 runs, and it's like only going 5.5, 6 innings. What just happened? But yeah. All right, let's get into the next wave of pitchers, where this gets you're starting to get into a little more dicey range. Still very good arms, pretty dicey, and my goodness, they have changed since the last time when I did this yesterday, so I'll go off the list here. The first one's Patrick Corbin. He's the 15th off the board. New deal in Washington. A lot of people are expecting the massive regression because career year, new ballpark, so on and so forth. Not obviously. I do agree that there should be some regression, but is it enough regression to scare you off of Patrick Corbin?
No, where he's been going, you're going to make that decision. Where Corbin goes, pretty much the aces are gone, and it's, do I want Corbin here, or am I going to play a little roulette with some pitching in the next round? And look, say he regresses to a 3.50 ERA or so. If he has the innings and the strikeouts, it's a good ballpark to pitch in. So I'm still in on Corbin. I have him in that 16 range. I think, these arms, I would take Paxton over. Maybe I'm in the minority in that. I know a lot of people are running away from Paxton. Look, even if it's 160, God forbid it gets to 180. If he gets 180 this year, it's going to be, it's going to be a windfall of riches. And, on the Yankees, I know it's not Safeco Field anymore, but you got to look at everything. Look at the home road splits. This is a guy that knows how to pitch. This is a guy that's got filthy stuff. He's going to be on one of the best teams in baseball. You're going to have some horrible teams to play against in that division in Baltimore. Toronto shouldn't be, outside of Vlad, shouldn't be too good.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to like there with Paxton, and he's the one that he jumped Flaherty and Taya. So since yesterday, Paxton is definitely an intriguing one. I'm not scared of him in New York. I'm liking the value in my theory that we're getting here, because to me, like 180 innings of Paxton, like you said, if we get that, he's up there in that Syndergaard grouping above this. Like he moves up there for sure. Like he was a Cy Young candidate until he gets hurt. It's like that's what he does every year. He strikes out more than 10 per 9. His ERA and whips don't kill you most of the time. You look at all the projections this year. He's got like a 3.5 below ERA by all the projection sites. And one thing when people say they get worried about New York in the Bronx there, I try to tell them the short porch is in right, not left. I know the ball.
It's critical. That's critical.
And I know the ball still flies out at times, but most of the time, most lineups, I'm not a professional manager, are going to throw righties out against the lefty. Thus, the ball is most of the time going to left field. That's just common, baseball physics here. But that's something that people need to calm down, because that was their big concern. I'm thinking, that some people might pop a couple out opposite field, but overall, it's not as big of a factor. So
he's got some of the best skills.
So, yeah. And he's not scared of, like, people forget his no-hitter was in Toronto, one of the best hitters ballparks in all of baseball, given not the great lineup, but still, the ball flies out of that yard to all parts. So he's just fine. Not too worried about that one. Next up, 2 youngsters here. Very interesting. Jack Flaherty, Jamison Taya, kind of going next to each other here. We already mentioned Taya, kind of a lot of talk about him. Flaherty's had a lot of talk too. Maybe not as much, but both super talented, just more kind of question marks. Can they take that next step? What's your thoughts on those two?
I go back and forth on them daily. Both arms I want to own. If I can have them as my SP2, I'm feeling really good. I think Chion's been more proven. We saw last year he got the innings. We saw when he introduced the slider those last 4 months, he threw it over 20% of the time, and it was becoming a money pitch for him. So for me, it's more of – it's not even really a floor for Tyon, but I'm saying, like, it's more like security. I think, you want the floor of Tyon or the possible ceiling of Flaherty. And Flaherty has some issues too. I mean, he's got to get that walk rate under control. So I think it's more of the personal preference. Like I said, I go back and forth on it daily. I think they're both young guys you want to own, and I would love to have either one as my SP2.
Okay, so you're buying into the improvements on both. I like that quite a bit.
Yes.
The last one here.
Like I said, I don't think they're going to be pitching, but I'm not going into the season with an expectation that, Tyon's beating last year's ERA or Flaherty is going to pitch to a 320 ERA. If they're 340, 350, 360, that's, they're getting strikeouts or pitching the innings. That's a hell of a pitcher.
Would you be okay starting your pitching staff with Flaherty or Tyon?
I wouldn't want to do it. If I did, then you're going to see me pound pitching for like the next 3 rounds. Okay. I'm going to try and get, Barrios next, Wheeler. I mean, Wheeler, I'm sure we'll touch on. He's no sure thing. There's a lot to like, but I'm going to have to be a lot more aggressive on pitching than I planned on.
All right. Right after these two, it's another young arm that's getting a little hype, but not quite like these previous two. He's the 4th arm in that Cleveland rotation, a very, very good Cleveland rotation. Mike Clevenger showed a lot of good signs last year, taking that next step as well. How do you look at Clevenger, and how do you compare him to Flaherty and Tyon?
I really like Clevenger. He made great strides last year. I like him a lot. I don't think we're going to, you got to bake in a pullback on his numbers. I don't see him. It was just a perfect storm last year. I think he's still going to strike guys out, can still pitch innings, but I do think we're going to see the ERA come back, which is still a good pitcher. But I mean, when people see a 3 ERA or something like that, and then it's a 370, they don't find that acceptable.
Yeah, it's funny how that works, huh? Very funny. Such a minute difference there. Like, I can't remember who broke it down. Like, that little minute difference is like 1 or 2 runs over. It's crazy.
Yeah, you get blown up a game here or there,
Yeah, there's been some good tweets. There's a lot of good guys, obviously, but some of them, I think Collette did it the other day. He did a deal for Odorizzi, and if you just take out like 2 starts, his numbers look really good, So you kind of got to take a step back sometimes.
Clevenger, I believe, is my SP20. So, okay. I mean, I do like the guy. I just think he's going to scale back too. I mean, I rarely put anybody below 3. I don't like to do that. Kershaw was the one exception, and maybe King Felix for a couple of years, but,
Okay. The next 2 guys, big-time standouts of their rotations. They still kind of are, depends on who you talk to. But Steven Strasburg, Zach Greinke going 20th and 21st off the board right now in NFBCs in about round 4-ish, a little after round 4, early round 5. How do you look at these two? Because Strasburg's always the injury concern. Greinke might get traded, for crying out loud. There's a lot to think about with these two.
Well, the thing I mean with Strasburg is I've chased the dragon every year. Those indicators are just so good. I mean, year after year, the strikeouts are there, compared to the innings pitched. That's just the problem. It seems to be something every summer. And last year was a neck injury. He came back. The fastball velocity was down. The one thing that helped, one benefit from that was the changeup was getting used even more. So I'm going to be monitoring him. I think I put him 19th. I'm going to be monitoring him this spring. I want to see where his fastball velo is sitting right now. I'm probably, if I need the pitcher in that round, I'm going to go Strasburg. I'll have to figure out, I'll bank 150 or so innings and be willing to fill in after that. But look, the guy still is talented. My main concern is the fastball, and I'm encouraged that we're going to see more and more of the change.
Yeah, it's very encouraging that he's been so good, even when he's been getting beat up at times with his injuries. So if we can get just like similar to Paxton, give me 170, 180 innings, and you're going to get some serious value here at this point in the draft. In all honesty, if Strasburg gives you that 180 innings and you're stuck with him as your first pitcher, it's probably not the worst thing you can do. But you're asking for a lot to work in your favor there too.
And, I mean, as far as Greinke goes, I find myself the last couple of seasons talking myself out of Greinke. You know, every year you hear the fastball velocities at 84 or some crazy number like that. And I mean, outside of that first season in Arizona, that's really the only stain on his resume in like the last, half a dozen or so, 7 years, maybe even longer. So the thing is, I think I'm moving this year, and I think you can see my rankings. I'm going more with the Jose Barrios, the Castillos, the Wheelers, as opposed to the older guys in the Greinke, the Bumgarner, and the Prices. So I'm moving them up and I'm pushing them back a little. Maybe it's I don't want to use that cliche. Rather be out a year before. Yeah. I mean, it was a very solid season, but if the strikeouts start decreasing even more on a bad team, I don't see the upside with it. I know he gives you the innings. If he got traded to the Dodgers, I would change my tune tomorrow.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, and that's the weird thing with him is you mentioned he had that one bad year at first. Last two in Arizona have been fine, over 200 innings both times. ERA around 3.2, but those strikeout numbers keep dwindling down, and that definitely does have to cause for some concern. Let's talk about a couple of young arms. You mentioned Jose Barrios quite a bit. He's the 22nd pitcher off the board, about pick 71. Right behind him is Mr. German Marquez. The kind of – you throw that name into a circle of fantasy experts and you might see a tornado. That's kind of how it goes right now. But what is it about Jose Barrios, and then we'll get to Marquez, that really has you going right now?
I think he's been a talented arm that we've known for the last couple of years. We've seen the struggles. We saw early last year the promise, and then that road. He kind of, I think at the end it was a bit fatigued. We see with these young guys. I mean, I think Severino wasn't just the tipping of pitches. That was one of the things. He was fatigued. His slider didn't have the same bite in that second half, and so with Barrios, like I said, I think he checks the boxes up. He has that 200 innings. He had about a 380-something ERA last year. The xFIP lined up with it. I mean, he's still got to hone a couple of things and make some progress. Work on a thing or two here or there. But I think this kid's on the come. I want to be involved. And if he finished as a top 12 pitcher, pitched over 200 innings, 200 strikeouts, I mean, I'm not going to be shocked. And I'm like, that's why I'm moving these guys up a little more, and I'm going away towards the other guys. I think the future is now, and this is where I want to live.
And this is why I'm glad I have guys like yourself on here. He's going to be, to make me look a little more at Jose Barrios, he's going to be 25 this year, so still super young. I would not have been able to guess 192 innings last year. I was just I get so frustrated with some of his starts, you'd forget it. He still ended with a 3.84 ERA, which played with his FIP and his xFIP just fine. I think a couple things, if he just tweaks, 1.17 homer per nine or 12.8% home run per fly ball, however you want to pick it. That's not ideal, obviously. If he can just kind of lower that to below 1 home run per nine, the amount of, extra maybe strikeouts, fewer ERA, all the good stuff we want for fantasy, you're right. This guy, he's so close to 200 innings already, which is crazy. Goes back to the beginning of only X amount of guys pitching 200 innings in the big leagues. This could be a big-time breakout year. You're onto something really big here, per usual, but I wouldn't have even have looked this deep into him. And, the strikeout rate went up last year compared to the previous season. There is a lot to like here about Jose Barrios. It's a very intriguing call there.
Yeah, when you look at the road split, though, it gets a little scary. So
yeah, which is weird.
It sobers you up quick. It sobers you up quick when you look at that.
Yeah, we just got to, and he's young, so hopefully it's just a matter of fixing a few things. Speaking of home road splits, let's talk to German Marquez at Coors Field. He made it work on both ends of the spectrum last year in the second half. We've seen all the amazing numbers from German Marquez, but we did this same song and dance with John Gray last year. We've done it with many pitchers in Coors. If you like him, tell me why he's different. If you don't like him, explain to me what other people are seeing.
I think I tweeted something out the other day where I don't own any German Marquez shares yet. I want to. I just can't pull the trigger, or I haven't pulled the trigger. I'm not sure if I will. I wish his ADP was a little further back, and say if he was my third. I don't want to draft a pitcher as my SP2 and have to say, you know what, I'm going to bench him a handful of times off the bat or something like that, knowing that, look, he's got a fantastic open to the season. I know he's got the Marlins in there. I think the Giants are in there.
Padres. He's got a great start. Yeah.
After that first month, we're going to be looking at this guy and everybody's going to be like, see, I told you. But that Coors, and I think Derek Carty made the point, it's just so much better for hitting than any other park out there. And to have to go up against that, half your starts, it's a tall task. So I love everything he did. I think the skills were phenomenal. It's just at that price, do I want to take on the fight against Coors? That's what you're really saying to yourself. And you're going to be seeing people saying, I was right, you were wrong, and all this. That's going to be coming. Like I said, wait till after April ends when they're like, this is the Cy Young because he had those, 4 starts. And so I think this is a really talented kid. And I think it did all come to fruition. I just don't know. I like him. I just wish I could get him a round or two later. I guess that's the point.
Yeah, and it doesn't really work in NFBCs because there's no trades. But what I would do with Marquez if you do draft him, enjoy the quick start, even when Colorado, because his first few starts might be good when it's cold there. This always happens when it warms up in, say, May and June in Colorado, then the explosions happen. Because every year it's like clockwork. People say, oh, look at the humidor must be working or the runs or whatever. Same story every year.
No, it's the cold and the snow.
Exactly. People forget about that. They point it out in Cleveland and Minnesota. They forget about it in Colorado. But that's where you go. You get like 6 or 7 good starts and then flip them. That's what you do if you want to play that game. But that's a game that might be tough to finagle. But other than that, it's tough because, you're saying Marquez a couple rounds later. Marquez and Kyle Freeland are 2 guys that everybody's written about, everyone's talked about. They were great last year. They're Coors proof. They're from the system, so on and so forth. But every expert draft I've seen, even the BARF draft that I was in, they are dropping like flies. Like you are getting them so much lower than their ADP because nobody in those rooms want to touch them. Is there, like you said a couple rounds later, do you have any similar thoughts to Kyle Freeland?
Oh, the thing with Freeland is, and he's a hometown kid. I believe he grew up in Colorado or at least spent most of his life there. But he doesn't have the swing and miss that Marquez has. And I do think that Freeland goes out there with a game plan, and he's trying to execute. And last year he did a phenomenal job at it. And, he'll induce some soft contact and stuff like that. But the whole thing is the margin of error is so slim. And I just don't want to – I don't want to face it in that tight window. And at least with Freeland, he's at a price where if you do believe in him, I can see the argument. You're not giving up a top 5 draft pick for him.
True.
He's going what?
162.
162. So he's going after the 10th round now. So you can get him after that. That's a thing where you can say, hey, if I believe in him, even if I'm wrong, it's not going to sink my team. So you can make that move. But as I mentioned before, there's that range. There's other guys there with, some upside and stuff that could really pan out as well. So there's always a give and take. I like Marquez a hell of a lot more. And I really want to be in the German Marquez business. I'm just scared shit. I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah, it would always be fun to be like, look I picked the right Coors guy finally, because we've all been there throughout time. If you played long enough, you've been to that. You buy in finally, and then it comes crashing down in front of you. Like Drogon comes through and just blows it all up. That's what happens.
Look, if we did a blind resume and we put the stats out on just paper, we didn't mention where he pitches, the dude would be even higher. And I wouldn't be able to 15. Argue that. Yeah. It's just, history is tough to beat.
It's very tough. It's undefeated most of the time. Let's look at a couple more here. This one is near and dear to my heart, but I believe a lot of the concerns along with it as well. Madison Bumgarner, he is now the 24th starting pitcher off the board. Talk about how life hits you fast. And he's still not that old yet, but velocity dropping, lots of concerns there. As a Giants fan, trying not to be biased, if anybody can figure out how to pitch with what they have, I do believe it's Mad Bum. Problem is he might not be 24th starting pitcher worthy. How do you look at Mad Bum?
I think you said it perfectly. If anybody can do it, it's Bumgarner. I think he's aware. If we're all aware, I think Madison Bumgarner is aware of what he needs to do. This guy is, watching him in the postseason has just been like, it's been amazing. I don't got to tell you.
Yeah, it's been nice.
I had him, I think, back in November when I did like my first initial rankings. I had him 22. Okay. Now I have him in more of the late 20s. I don't know if it's like 28, 29, somewhere around there. I'm thinking I'm not buying the full collapse. I don't think he's collapsing. I think he's a 3, not a 2. I think he figures it out. I think being in that ballpark still helps him. Mm-hmm. If he does get traded, say he ended up in like Milwaukee or something, just to give a good hitter's ballpark, that could hurt him. But I think he's somebody that will figure it out. He'll make that adjustment. This is a prideful guy. This is a guy I want fighting on my side. So I don't think he's going full collapse here. I have to push him down a little, but he's still in my top 30.
Yeah, and to echo your sentiments about if we know, Bumgarner knows, he hasn't flat out said it, but every time he gets interviewed so far this spring, he is one pissed off big man. Like really angry. Like you can hear it in his interviews. He knows that people are basically saying he's done, and he's taking that to heart, it looks like. Does that mean it's going to matter? No, but it does help a ton.
Yeah, no. I definitely want to see that attitude. Look, I remember Adam Wainwright going on Sirius and saying he was going to be great, and that didn't happen. But I think Bumgarner is nowhere near where Wainwright was. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I'm a total agreement. He'll figure it out. I don't think it's going to be like, Madison Bumgarner of old, but I think this could still be a hell of an effective pitcher. I think, barring another one of these crazy injuries, he's going to give you 200 innings. So if he gives you 200 innings with a 3.75, a 3.80 ERA, and say, over 8 strikeouts per 9, that's some good pitcher. Really especially in a 15-team league. That's a good pitcher.
And with so many guys being down on him, going in a range of 65 to 102, you get closer to that 102 side, and then you start getting some love out of it. So no problem there at all. The last guy here, pick 25, or the 25th starting pitcher off the board, pick 84, Mike Foltynewicz. This is a guy that is a DFS player like myself. We used to pick on religiously. Last year, he shut a lot of people up. He actually pitched really, really well. Do we continue to think he takes that next step this year?
Well, see, the difference last year, I had a lot of Folty shares because he was an emerging market, and he was somebody to speculate on. The price was right. It was pretty cheap. Now you're paying, you're paying a high dollar, and I'm walking away from Folty. I've been pretty adamant about that. I'm a bit concerned about the Braves' current pitching staff as constituted. Look, they have a wealth of young arms that are talented. I think Folty's talented too. But I think he's going to regress, and the price, based upon how much pullback he's going to have, I'm out. And I still think he's got to be a top 30 arm, but he's not going to end up on my team. And just looking at the peripherals and stuff and everything, the slide piece was just he rode that to success last year. And he's got a couple other pitches. If they can hit, I think it's still going to take some time. And even if this year isn't his year, I don't think he's done. I think, once he gets, something else to work with that slide piece as a secondary pitch, then, the league is in a lot of trouble. I just don't see it happening right now. I think, I think there is going to be the pullback.
Yeah, I'm with you there. It's hard for me to buy in on him. I know it sounds cliche because we're buying in on like Taya and those other guys, but there's just something different in what you break down with the pitch mix, the quality of the pitches, so on and so forth. After Folty, we won't go too deep into these, but just some names that pop out. You got Wheeler, Mikolas, David Price, Luis Castillo are the next kind of 4 that go off the board there. There's a lot to like there. I know you mentioned Wheeler a few times. It's kind of why I wanted to ask this question. How do you look at that grouping of 4? Because I pretty much would take almost all of those over Foltynewicz, but that's just me.
I have Wheeler and Castillo. I think 21 is Barrios, 22 is Castillo, and 23 is Wheeler. Look, I've been up until last year, I was finally out. Last year, I was like, you know what? I'm finally out on Zack Wheeler. I think he's going to be one of those multi-inning dominant relief pitchers. I think that's where he can really be successful. And then, what was it, around May 22nd or the first week of June, he was just dominant. I mean, he was going 7 innings a start. I think in, his last 11 starts, he let up like 2 runs or less, or 8 of those 11, something crazy like that. I mean, he was just everything. The fastball was working, the slider, the split finger, I think he threw just under 10%. And if he can get that to be a weapon, which he's going to need. And we saw the control gains, and that's imperative. They have to stick, because that's been his problem in the past. Staying healthy has been another problem as well. But look, there's a lot to like, and he's not a sure thing. He's not. I have him pretty high. He's not a sure thing, but there's a lot to like. The Mets, that big three could really do something if they could ever stay healthy for a full season. So, yeah, I definitely want to be involved in Wheeler. What's his current ADP for the month of February? You have it up there?
86.85.
Yeah, he's moving further up. And that's when I did my starting preview a couple of weeks back, I put, I'm currently willing to pay his price. But as we get closer and closer to March, I may have to reassess, as it may get too expensive at some point. But as of now, I'm still in, because I'm just looking at the landscape after that. I mean, it gets sketchy pretty quick. So I think in those first 4 rounds, you really want to try and get, 2 starting pitchers. I know there's a lot of good hitting, but you need to have pitching stats as well. Mm-hmm. The other one, I feel like I'm like his agent or his representative, Louis Castillo. And look, I like him. Yeah, I mean, I was in on him last year. The first half, I've said it before, was total dog shit. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't get enough credit for the second half. The second half was pretty damn good. I mean, he was basically atop the leaderboard on, qualified starting pitchers in that second half, swinging strike percentage, ERA, xFIP, his strike percentage, walk percentage, we're around top 15 in the league. He did a lot of good things. And one of the things I put in the preview was, he cut back. Look, we all know the fastball's a problem. And there's plenty of pitchers with a bad fastball, but they got 2 secondary pitchers. In my preview, I kind of pound the pitchers that I like with the slider curveball. His change is his pitch. And, he threw that and the slider 10% more in the second half, and the fastball 10% less. He also got maybe like 2 miles. He got an uptick on the fastball. I don't know the exact, but somewhere in that 2-mile range. And we saw a different pitcher. And another thing, I preach this a lot. I like pitchers that go through the experience. One of the reasons I'm more confident too this year is he failed. He failed miserably last year.
Big time.
And he knew going in there he was a highly touted guy and all this, and he pretty much got his ass kicked that whole first half. And he made adjustments, and he still needs to make adjustments. He's not a finished product, but this is a kid whose fastball, what was it? I think in the second half was 3rd with Jacob deGrom for the season. Was tied for 6th with Blake Snell. It's got the velo. Look, if you throw a straight fastball, you're gonna get hit and stuff like that. It's still not finished, but at least he's got like a 97-mile-an-hour fastball he can work with, and she's got secondary stuff. So if that can be somehow fixed and somehow managed, then I forget their new pitching coach they got. I like him in Cincinnati. So there's a lot of hope, and you got to remember, as bad as that first half was, that second half was really, really good. He really doesn't get enough credit, which a lot of people moved on. Especially say in 12-team leagues, you cut them, and then you didn't get to experience that second half. I mean, he helped me in the leagues I had him. He was a critical piece. I needed him to turn around in the second half, and he got me to a couple championships because he turned it around. It's a long season. That's why I always preach: don't cut talented players. If there's any way you can hold them on your roster, if you got to bench him and stuff, that's why there's a bench. Yep. So I mean, I still like the kid, and for all those reasons I just gave. The funny thing is, at home he pitched really good last year. On the road, he did not pitch well. His road numbers.
Jose Barrios syndrome too.
Yeah,
crazy.
His road, another young guy with that same kind of thing. So, like I said, I'm more apt to take a chance on him than some of these other guys. And I think Cincinnati, look, the Reds had to make these moves. I mean, some of the pitchers they got were like, yeah, who cares? But, their attendance was so down in Cincinnati.
It's horrible.
They haven't won, 70 games in the last couple of seasons. And that's been, one of the strongholds of baseball. So I get what they're trying to do there to try to win. I love the Puig trade and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're going to be much more competitive. I like it a lot. There's a lot to like in that lineup, especially a Joey Votto bounce back season. And it's interesting.
I bet on that.
Yeah, definitely. Like the value on him, my God. We talked about some of these pitchers. He's going so late, it's ridiculous. But, Luis Castillo, Jose Barrios, maybe it's, something with these kids, comfort of sleeping in your own bed at home and going on the road, maybe getting into trouble or staying in a hotel. Or there's a lot of factors. We forget how young they still are, and the life changes because they're not coming from normal lifestyles. They're coming from, Latin American countries and other things. It's a little different way of life. So it comes at you fast. We saw how Aroldis Chapman and Puig were when they were younger, and some have grown up, some haven't. But their game got better as they got older. So
maturity is a big thing. And real quick, like with Clevenger, I don't want people to think I don't like Clevenger. I just adverse to a lot of other people. I'm more conservative. I'd rather look at projections and say, look, I don't think a 370 or 360, if everything else is there, is bad. And a 320 is maybe the 95 percentile. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I'm not looking at 95 percentile expectations. So I just don't people think I don't like Mike Clevenger because I do like him. I just come at it with a different, maybe a more harsher look, where I'm more realistic. At least that's what I try to be.
Well, when it comes to a guy like Clevenger, I know he's really, really good, and he could be a lot better than this next name I'll mention, but he's at like pick 56 to 60. And I know they're not going to be, identical, but at pick 218, you get Joe Musgrove, who I can see a lot of Mike Clevenger in. So I'm not going to say they're going to be the same pitcher, but that many picks apart, what you could do.
Yeah, but see, I look at that differently. Like I want to bank, on Mike Clevenger because he's done it, and I still want to be involved in a Joe Musgrove. That's like somebody we had a thing on Twitter a couple of weeks ago where somebody put out like the bats projections for Trey Turner and Sterling Marte, and they were like very similar. They were like, well, why wouldn't you just wait and get Sterling Marte? Number one, you don't know if you're getting Sterling Marte. Yep. Bank Trey Turner's stats. And look, even if you still want to, you can get a Sterling Marte, whatever, but you don't know he's going to be there. I know he's here. Well, I'm going to pass on this guy, which I can get this guy 2 rounds later. When other people like that guy too, and somebody might like him a whole round ahead of you. Yep. So, you have that plan. I'm fine with getting guys, and I tweeted out yesterday about, look, I like Anthony Rondon, but if there's another guy that has his skill set and I can't get Anthony Rondon, I have a list. Doesn't even have to be a third baseman. Yep. What are these numbers? What is 290, 25 homers, 100 RBIs? Who else can provide me these? And that's what we really got to be looking at. Yeah, and that's why, like I said, like with the starting pitching, to me, you really want to get 2 arms in that top 20. 2 arms if you can, and maybe even the top, 16 or however you have it ranked, 18. But definitely that top 20. And like I said, if that's the more beneficial because that allows you to take more shots on the arms because we know, things are going to happen. And you know what I'm saying? And you're fine taking a Taylor Glass now, later on in your rotation because he doesn't have to hit for you.
Well, it makes a ton of sense. 2 quick questions for you, and we'll wrap this up. First off, when I think I've asked you on previous podcasts, but for those that might not have listened, when you're evaluating your pitchers and you're looking at different stats and everything, what are like the 2 or 3 top stats you're looking at? Because we know there's XFIP, there's all kinds of different ones. What do you look at for evaluating talent?
I mean, the number one thing everybody does, or if you don't do it, you should start with is, strikeouts minus walk percentage. That should be the initial. I'm an XFIP guy. I don't even look at FIP, I'll be honest with you. I like XFIP. DRA is another one I like. I'll even look at Sierra. But as far as the other stuff, to me, first pitch strike is extremely imperative. It just sets you up so much better as a pitcher. I mean, even for a hitter. If a hitter's ahead in the count 2-0 as opposed to 0-2, there's a world of difference there. So first pitch strike, the swinging strike percentage, and I think chase rate is really important. And we saw guys like last year we were waiting on, like a Trevor Bauer. Look at the chase rate jump in him. I believe Wheeler had it too, but you'll see guys. It's like, wow, they really because they were missing that. Not that they didn't have the stuff, but Bauer's swinging strike percentage up in before last year was never anything great. It was always like that 9-10% range. And then when he got the people to chase, you see the jump. You see what happens. So, I mean, those are things I really key on. Would I want a ground ball pitcher over a fly ball pitcher? Yes, but not in every aspect. There are fly ball pitchers that are very good. I can just throw out like Scherzer, Verlander types and stuff like that. So, that's not necessarily, but you do want to see the ground ball. Another reason why, like a Walker Buehler, him and like Aaron Nola were guys in the second half. That 30% strikeout rate and the 50% ground ball, that's a hell of a stat. And it's something you want to look at. And that's the other thing with Buehler is look at Buehler post All-Star break as well. Because then if you just look at the season, you see that 11% swing and strike rate. You look at from post All-Star break, he's 12.5. You see that jump. You see it starting to come for him. And he's still a baby as far as his MLB experience.
All right. Okay, it's one listener with 2 questions. Yancey Eden, you know him very well.
Oh, Yancey's awesome.
Yeah, he came with some fun ones and a not so fun one, or a serious one, I should say. First off, the fun one. Have you ever eaten a meal and not posted it on Twitter?
Yeah, sometimes I'm just too hungry and I just can't wait. Usually what I'll do is I'll take the picture before I eat. Yeah. And then post it later. But
yeah, you are a food connoisseur, brother from another mother, right there. Also, he wants to know your general strategy involving picking on the turn in 15-teamers. You kind of talked about it a little bit. He said it's a weird spot because it feels too early for Verlander, Cole, Kluber, but the starting pitchers that make it back aren't number ones. You kind of hit on it. Maybe clarify that real quick.
I'll clarify it. Especially there's a difference in the 12 and the 15. In the 12, I'm fine with it. You don't have to. In the 12, I don't think you have to pull up a pitcher. In the 15, it's basically what is your game plan going to be? Are you going to go 4 straight hitters? If you don't, you got to ask yourself, if I don't take a pitcher at 15, 16, am I going to go 4 hitters if all the pitchers that I want are gone? So that's something you have to go into before the draft, not at 15 and be like, oh my God, what am I going to do here? So if you look at it that way and say, okay, my first 4 are going to be hitters. These are the pitchers I'm targeting, and I'm going to pound 3 or 4 of them after that. That's one strategy. The other strategy is like what we saw today, and I mentioned what like James Anderson did. If you believe, say, Garrett Cole's your number 4, or Aaron Nola or Justin Verlander, don't be afraid to pull that guy up because you're not going to get him. You're picking at the turn, so you have to be aggressive. You need to pull certain guys up, around. If whatever, at the 3-4 turn, say you just love Puig. You have to have Puig, and he's going in the 5th round, and you really want him on your team. I'm just making it, for instance. You got to pull him up there. And, go into it seeing what are my options most likely. It's not guaranteed that that's going to happen. Like, where am I going to get a closer? Like, am I waiting to the 10th round? Am I looking at the Jose Alvarados, the Leclercs, who are very talented arms? But, these are questions that you have to ask yourself, map out before the draft. Because that's why people panic. You panic because you didn't have a plan. Your guy went, like, oh, shit, what am I going to do here? Or, no, should I pull this guy up, but I really want him? When you start like that, it's, you got a minute to pick and stuff. There's not enough time.
It's such a great point. They're planning it out because, mock drafts are great. You can do a lot of things to kind of see where things flow. ADP helps with that. But I know yourself and many others, and Ryan Bloomfield wrote a great article on it for his labor draft. He knew his pick, I believe it was like 6th in the draft. He literally wrote down for each round like 4 players he was targeting so he could pivot. Like you're saying, he knew if something got taken, he already had his game plan because there's only so much time on that clock. And if you're panicking, you're screwed. You're going to make a bad pick most of the time because you just panic and pick one.
You're going to force yourself into an error. It's just human nature. You get excited. You're excited for the draft number 1. I don't care if it's a free draft or a $5,000 draft. You're excited number 1. You're there for a reason. You're excited. especially if it's live or if it's on the radio. You're even more nervous. And if you start panicking, it's just going to screw your whole thing. And then if you look back and say, "Oh my God, I can't believe I made that pick," and now you're trying to make up or compensate, and you're just losing it. You're losing your train of thought. You're losing, your advantage, in my opinion.
Totally agree. One last question, and we will be gone. Since we are Game of Thrones fans, and he will be back on in June, I guess it would be, when it's all wrapped up. Who do you think sits on the Iron Throne?
I've said it when I started reading the books years ago. I've always thought it would be Gendry and Arya marry. I think it's too obvious too with Daenerys and that. And I think it's Gendry and Arya that sit on the Iron Throne together. We get the Baratheon Stark, families reunite this time for good.
That'd be interesting. That's a good one. I like that. Well, I have not read the books. I just watched the show.
And what's yours?
Mine, the interesting one I thought is how weird or interesting would it be if it's Dany and Snow's kid? That's an angle because last we saw them. But I still think for some reason I think it might be too easy, but I think it's Bran. I think there's something with Bran that just he has like all that the mental stuff he's got going on, all that. But that's where I'm at right now is Bran. I would love to see Arya there though. I think she'd be a phenomenal ruler. Yeah,
her and the Hound in the book were my two favorite characters.
Yeah, like Arya is just how do you not like when she comes on the screen? I smile. Like there's an interest when she comes on there. It's just so entertaining and so awesome. And what she's become to this point compared to where she was, it's scary, but it's really really cool.
The only disappointing casting on that series to me was, at least from taking it from the book angle, was the casting of Tyrion Greyjoy's sister. I was so disappointed. In the book, she is like this warrior and. You think of this fierce kind of thing. I think the girl they had, I don't know. I was just looking like a Xena type of.
Yeah, like this one, she tried to play hard, but she was more of a friendly sister than a badass. Basically, that's what you're saying. Yeah. Like you could almost get Cersei, but maybe would have done it better than her. Yeah. But all right, man, I've kept you long enough. I appreciate it. We will definitely do this again.
This is always a pleasure. Something I always look forward to. Hopefully. What is it? We only get 6 episodes, right? Of Game of Thrones.
Okay, maybe it is 6. So then it starts in April. Then you'll be back on in May. We will have you on in May. So that'll be beautiful.
At least the prequel got greenlit. So
beautiful. That's good. So we will still have some Game of Thrones in our lives.
Yes.
That's always good. But everybody, go check him out on Twitter at CTM Baseball. Matt Modica, great follow, great guy, and now has his awesome work over at The Athletic, doing his fantasy sports work there. Again, my friend, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
Everybody, this is Bench with Bubba, episode 146. Catch you guys later.